I had to really take a step back and go, okay, well, what do I need to do here to keep myself safe, but to help this horse to understand that I'm not trying to hurt her, I'm trying to make her life better. Horses aren't easy. If you're, looking for a 9-to-5 job, then horses probably is not that. So it's a lot of the mental side of it more than the physical side of it. So
our guest today on Horse Chats is Georgia Bates. First of all, I'd just like to remind you that the podcast is brought to you by International Horse College, and the mission of International Horse College is to improve the welfare of horses around the world through safe education of their riders, handlers and trainers. So have a look now at the wide variety of horse courses incorporating horse safety and horse welfare, or safety around horses and horse welfare, at internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now, going on from that, we want to talk about horse welfare. I'm going to introduce you to Georgia Bates, who's shown an impressive understanding of horse nature, horse thoughts, horse behaviour, horse understanding. And this, of course, is going to lead to better horse welfare. So I'd like to introduce you to Georgia. Now, Georgia, welcome to the chat.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here, Georgia. And this is your first podcast, I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Georgia, we're sort of doing a few Equitana guests, right? And if someone's thought, Georgia Bates, I'm sure I've heard about her before. So I'd just like to say that if you have, it's because Georgia has either presented and or competed at Equitana in 2013, 2014, 2022, and she's going to be presenting 2 education sessions at this year's 2024 Equitana. Now, Georgia's been training professionally since 2010. She loves competing in colt start events and wild training events. She's competed in the Australian Brumby Challenge, and that's twice. She's also done the Extreme Mustang Makeover in America and the Way of the Horse, but she represented Australia in New Zealand for Equitana when she did the Way of the Horse. And she's also completed, just to add to her impressive resume, Trainers Challenge at the Man from Snowy River Bush Festival and Horsewoman's Touch Colt Start at Australia's Greatest Horsewoman. So Georgia starts all breeds of horses, but she specialises, with her impressive resume, I'm sure, in training wild horses. As well as that, she teaches lessons, clinics and general horsemanship, and specialises in obstacles, trail riding and liberty, and also competes a little bit in Western disciplines and learning a bit more about reining and cattle events with her own personal horses. So, Georgia, welcome. Welcome to Horse Chats.
Thank you very much.
Georgia, normally I start our guests off with a favourite quote. So do you have like a favourite inspirational quote, that you might say to yourself? You might tell it to other people if you're teaching clinics or anything else, but it might be something that you say to yourself on a regular basis.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about this, I thought I really appreciate and resonate with the Man in the Arena quote, which is by Theodore Roosevelt. So it's quite a long, lengthy quote, but basically the gist of it being that people will criticize you and have comment on what you do and have opinions, but it's the man in the arena, the person putting themselves out and doing the hard work that matters. And for me, obviously competing in the public eye, that can be a big opportunity for people to see what you do and think highly of that, or to criticize you and say that what you're doing isn't how they would do it or what they think is correct. So particularly competing in colt starts and things like that, where there's often mixed feelings on those kind of competitions, I like to remind myself that, I'm putting myself out there, but I'm putting in the hard work to give the horse the best deal and to help educate people. So that quote really resonates with me because I remind myself that, I'm putting myself out there, but I'm doing the best I can do and I'm giving it all I've got. So I really, really like that, the man in the arena.
So, Georgia, tell me about Steve Burke. How did you meet him? How old were you when you first met him?
Yeah, so I first met Steve when I was about 15 or 16. So he was a good friend of some of our family friends that we've known since I was born. So our friends bred quarter horses and did a little bit of cutting in pony club and all that sort of stuff. And they were good friends with Steve. And Steve happened to be back in the Geelong area at the time when I was having some trouble with a mare that I owned who didn't want to get in a straight load float. And so she would float in an angle load, but not in a straight load. And so my friend Ken Hull, he said, oh, well, Steve's back in town. Maybe he can come and give you a bit of a hand. And I said, all right, sure. Sounds good. So I'd only done, pony club and English riding and hadn't done any natural horsemanship or anything like that. So they were saying, he can come and help you. I was like, all right, sure, let's give this a go. So I was very fortunate that he was able to come out every night after school and then on the weekends and spent a week with me working with my horse and teaching me the basic groundwork to help get some better communication going and then applying that to the horse float. So that's where I first got to work with Steve. And then over the years, just whenever he came back into Victoria to do clinics or whatever, I was able to learn a bit more from him over the time and catch up. Often then it became that we'd just catch up at Equitana when he was over to see that. We'd catch up and spend a bit of time together then, as he now lives in Perth. So it's been a little bit hard to get him over here post-COVID, really.
Okay, now just putting together a few pieces here. You turned professional in 2010. How old were you when you did that?
So I just finished high school in 2009. So I was 18 when I got my first Brumbie. And originally that was while I was at university. So I went to university and got a degree in secondary education and a degree in sport and outdoor recreation with the intention of being a school teacher and doing horses as a hobby. So I got my first Brumbie just to train and then sell on as a bit of a fun project. But that very quickly became an opportunity where people started asking me for lessons and to work with their horses. So in my first year of uni, I sort of started my business and then it snowballed from there to where I finished my uni degree, but I was very much training horses full time and just finishing the degree to finish. And then I've never worked as a teacher in a school because the horse training business is what grabbed my passion and my love. So yeah.
It's good to tick the box though and just go, right, I've done that. That if you ever needed to, I think there's more, as far as degrees go, there's more people who are professional horse people who are teachers rather than any other degree or any other qualification.
Yes.
Because I'm a teacher as well, and it came in handy when I had a lot of prac students. I was doing a lot of practical stuff and then started to take my training organisation online, and there wasn't a lot of, it was all a bit new and it wasn't enough to earn an income. So I still did it. I did it sort of on the side while I was still full-time teaching. And it was then, about 2 years later, that my online business took off and it was easy. And it was good because I could go in and be a teacher for a couple of years, but still do my horse stuff on the side. And then, so it was just a good backup, and not that you probably need it, but it's nice to know that you've got a good backup.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, and then you've started to enter for a few events. And I know you competed when you're in Pony Club, but what gave the enthusiasm to start competing at different events?
So I guess the Brumbies are a big driving force with that. So once I started working with the Brumbies and seeing how great they could be if you invested that time into them. Most of the Brumbies I sold in those first few years were all sold as kids' ponies. So I did I'd have one at a time generally. Sometimes I might have two on the go. But yeah, seeing the Brumbies and the versatility really is what sparked my passion for the wild horse competitions and the colt starting and all that stuff. So from there, that's where I sort of was looking overseas at what was happening.
And you're going to talk about the Brumbies at Equitana, aren't you?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And before we start on the Brumbies, because I do want to talk about them a bit more, the fact that, I think one of your talks is that horses don't do anything wrong. It's more about a misunderstanding. Is that the way you'd put it? Misunderstanding, they don't quite understand what you mean, or they're worried about what you mean, or tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so the title of my education demonstration for the Saturday at Equitana is The Horse is Never Wrong. And so that's something that I've brought into my horsemanship philosophy a lot from what I've learnt with Steve. and it's about our attitude towards the horse. So it's about helping people to understand that horses either reacting in the moment, or they can be reacting and acting in ways from learned behavior, but that they're not deliberately doing things to upset us or to annoy us. Like often people will label horses as naughty or bad, or deliberately doing something, but they don't think like that. So the philosophy of the horse is never wrong is more about reframing how we view the horse's behavior. And so instead of labeling the horse's behavior as bad, it's up to us to start to go, okay, well, why is the horse behaving this way? Is it because it's anxious or scared? Or is it because it is a learned behavior? So certainly there's learned behavior that we would consider, bad or undesirable, but the horse doesn't know bad and good behavior. He's just doing what he's learned has worked in the past. So it's up to us to, instead of labeling the horse as bad, to say, okay, well, it's my job to help communicate to the horse what I would like him to do in this situation and how I would like him to respond. And if we can get rid of the negative emotion and the feelings of the horse is being bad, and we can say, okay, this is just information that the horse is providing to us, what can I do with that? And why I really enjoy learning from Steve is because he's such a positive person that if the horse gets it wrong, does the wrong thing, he goes, yes, good idea. We can work on that again. Or he'll say, yes, that's great. We get to work on it again. We get to do it again.
Yeah,
and it's that philosophy, that reframing how you view the horse's behavior.
I love that. I love the, yep. What an opportunity. So instead of thinking about challenges or problems, he's saying, what an opportunity.
Yeah.
The other chat that you're doing about the Brumbies, and Australia has got the largest population. I was really surprised. I thought that there must be more Mustangs, but it really is Australia that's got this huge Brumby population. And I've done a couple of chats with people when they were, talking about Victorian and working at the Brumbies, the problem with the Brumbies in Victoria, and they were in the process of trying to stop the helicopters, going out with machine guns or whatever it is to shoot the horses, and trying to stop that. But tell me a little bit more about the population within Australia. And I think, within Victoria, there's quite a few herds of Brumbies there. But I think just generally in Australia, tell us a bit more about the Brumbies.
Yeah, so Australia has about 300,000 wild horses. So that's quite a lot of wild horses spread over the various areas. So there's obviously a lot in Victoria and New South Wales, as well as up in more desert areas in Central Australia and Queensland and all that. But the Brumbies that I work with predominantly are the mountain Brumbies from Victoria and New South Wales, and they are typically pony types. So hardy horses that are surviving in those more alpine environments. And they're the ones that I've had the most experience with, and they've just been wonderful to work with. But my passion comes from being able to promote them through the work that I do, promote them as quality riding horses and show people that, they're not just these weedy little scrawny, scruffy, feral horses that the media likes to make out. It's very easy to take photos and videos of, a few horses that might look a little bit poorly and say, well, that's what all Brumbies look like. But it's been shown, particularly more recently, by a lot of the photographers who go up there regularly, that these horses are beautiful and they're in quite good condition and they look very strong and healthy and sound. And the more that I can train these horses and get them into homes and compete with them myself and show people what they can do, then that's my way of trying to help the situation. And rather than see them be culled and shot from helicopters, say, well, let's put more effort into the trapping programs and the rehoming programs, because these horses do have value.
Yeah, and it's not just horse people who should be thanking you, it's just the general Australian population, because people think of Australia and think of wild horses, and it might be a bit romantic, but, it's Australian heritage. It's what we've done, you think of Man from Snowy River.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just a good example with that is, the Man from Snowy River Bush Festival that draws thousands of people every year. And that is all surrounded on that heritage and that history of horses in our culture.
Yeah, poetry, movies, everything.
Yeah.
We've talked about one trainer. Is there anyone else that has influenced you? Tell us a bit more about the people that you've worked with.
Yeah, so over the years, I've done clinics with a few different Australian trainers who are obviously quite well known. So Warwick Schiller being one of those who I've been lucky enough to ride in a few clinics here in Australia with him. And then I was also able to ride in one of his demonstrations at a horse expo in Canada. So I really value Warwick's contribution to the horsemanship world, particularly in more recent years, where he's been open to more methods and more ideas and really bringing that into the common horse person's world, I guess. So through his video program as well as his physical clinics. So Warwick is definitely someone who I admire and have been following his video programs and things over the years. And then I've also done clinics with Dan Steers over the years for my interest in Liberty. So, yeah, followed their Double Dan horsemanship program for the Liberty and a bit of the trick training side of the horsemanship as well. And then probably the other main one in my earlier years, I would do a few clinics with Ken Faulkner. And Steve actually worked for Ken Faulkner as well. So his style is kind of similar to what Ken does. So, yeah, they're probably the main ones. And then adding in some clicker training as well, which I learnt the basics of the clicker training from Georgia Bruce, who's been a Paralympic dressage rider for Australia in the past and a very successful clicker trainer. So, yeah, they're the main influences that I've had here in Australia. And then when I was overseas, I was fortunate to ride with some really good horsemen over there. I got to participate in a clinic with Martin Black and then also Dave Alice, who's a high-level Pirelli instructor. So that was a pretty cool experience when I was living in America as well.
That we've sort of had a bit to do with some of those. I've just done a podcast with Warwick in preparation for Equitana, and I listened to a couple of episodes of his podcast, Journey On, and that was great. It was good, thought-provoking, but I've listened to more since then, and I just think, some of these episodes, they haven't got horses in them, but they're really good to listen to for horse people to get them thinking just a little bit different, So I would encourage anyone, if you want to listen to Warwick's podcast, just go to horsechats.com and search for Warwick or search for Schiller. But have a listen to his Journey On podcast. And, I just think that certainly is thought-provoking. And then you start to bring that into the horse training. And it's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And Warwick is one who I really admire for helping people to look at themselves and not just look at what the horse is doing. And that comes back to my topic of talking about saying the horse is never wrong. It's what do we need to do in this scenario? Not just what does the horse need to do differently?
Yes, that's right. It's not always about the horse. Sometimes it's what we need to do as a person who's there with the horse, training the horse, doing something with the horse. How do we need to change to be able to communicate with the horse better?
Yeah, for sure.
What about horses? You did say something about a horse where you first met Steve Burke, that had a bit of trouble loading in a straight load trailer. But are there any other particular horses that, and sometimes horses are given to us, they might be labelled as problem horses, but once you start to work with it, you think, I'm just learning so much from this horse. Is there any one particular horse that you can think of that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I've had a few over the years, but the standouts probably would always come back to the wild horses that I've trained for the Brumby Challenge. The 2 times that I've done that, I had a grey mare the first year who, for the first initial handling, wanted to kick my head in. So I spent a good deal of time at the safety of up high on the fence trying to just throw a rope over her and get her to accept some touch, and she was not having any of that. So I had to really take a step back and go, okay, well, what do I need to do here to keep myself safe, but to help this horse to understand that I'm not trying to hurt her, I'm trying to make her life better. So that was a big turning point for my horsemanship, because prior to that, I hadn't had much exposure to roping, like roping a horse to rope a wild horse or anything like that. And my naive opinion of that was, oh, well, that must be stressful and cruel, and that's not a good thing to do, just because I didn't have any real experience with it. And I'd probably seen, as we all see on social media, we see videos of things done badly, and we can be quick to form opinions on certain training methods from the bad examples. And so then once I was working with this mare and I just had a normal soft long cotton rope, not a lariat rope, and I was just throwing that over her back and trying to get her to accept some touch, and I'd been trying the slow approach of getting her to eat from my hand, and that was only working to a certain extent. She would then turn and want to kick me again. And so through this process and chatting with Steve and thinking about, well, what do I need to do differently here? And given it was also a competition, so there was a 100-day time frame to get this horse trained, I thought, you know what, maybe I do need to throw a rope on this horse and get my hands on this horse a bit quicker. And that is what I've learnt over the time, and with my experience of working with probably over 100 Brumbies now, is that if you go too slow and try to do the slow approach, you can actually be prolonging their fear. Whereas if you throw a rope on them, you know, you're not pulling them, you're not choking them down, none of that, but throw a rope on them and then get hands on them, and they actually come around much quicker, and the fear goes away much quicker, and they realize that it's okay. So that was a big turning point for my horsemanship, because from there I was able to then start doing the colt starting events where you've got even less time frame and make good progress and be able to show the horse that it is okay, that I am there to help them. So definitely that grey mare wanting to kick me was a blessing in disguise, because it really made me have to advance my horsemanship and think outside the box and not dismiss methods that I thought maybe were not for me, and learn a bit more and upgrade my skills because of that.
It's certainly a challenge then you've turned into a gift, haven't you?
It's been a wonderful journey, that's for sure.
Is there anyone that you think that people should be watching? You know, maybe someone that you watch regularly on YouTube or listen to their podcast, or you've read their book, something. Is there anyone else that's sort of been a bit outside your, you know, ability to contact people and work with them, but someone else that you might think of? Or do you just put yourself in the place where if you want to work with someone, you make sure you do?
Yeah, obviously, there's so many people out there that I see on social media and I think, oh, wow, you know, I'd love to learn from them. But one that I have been following, you know, thanks to Warwick's podcast, having had him on the podcast, is Tick Maynard from Canada. And so he has a great book called In the Middle of the Horseman, talking about a bit of his story and life as a working student and working his way up to a very successful show jumper and horse trainer. But he's really an interesting one, because you might have seen he actually won Road to the Horse this year. And so as an English writer and coming into that world, it was quite good to see him work with that horse in that time frame and in that format, when it's typically been, you know, a cowboy's sort of realm. It was quite good to see someone like that come in and see that, yeah, good horsemanship is good horsemanship. And it doesn't matter what discipline we do, it, you know, if we've got a good foundation and a good understanding of the principles of horsemanship, then it doesn't matter what discipline we do or what hat we wear. So definitely recommend people to look up Tick Maynard if you haven't heard of him before. He's a very interesting guy.
Okay, now just thinking about working with good horsemen, you know, good people in the horse industry, or no, first of all, we'll start with, if you need someone to help you, you know, with your horses, it might be just someone to feed them, to care for them, that hasn't even got particularly good horse skills yet, but they're keen, they're interested, and they say, look, can I work for you? What sort of character traits? Now, we're not talking about knowledge around horses, because that can be learned. But before that, even deeper than that, what sort of person do they have to be to work in the horse industry and stay in the horse industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think having good integrity where you're prepared to learn, but you're also prepared to put the horse's welfare first. So often you hear of people working in certain areas of the horse industry where they say, oh, well, that's just how they do things. And, you know, I didn't think that was right, but that's how they do things. I say, well, you don't have to stay in those situations. You could leave that job and say, no, I don't agree with that. And so having good integrity to your values and the values that are best for the horse, and then within that being open to learning as well. So like I said before, not being dismissive of things just because you think one way, but being open to learning, but then still, yeah, at the end of the day, putting the horse first. So I think I've had a lot of working students work for me over the years, and the ones that have done the best have been ones that are curious and ask questions and want to really have a good relationship with horses above anything else.
And then from that, taking a step further, what character traits or core skills do you think that the people who go on to be, professional and well thought of professionals, what skills, what character traits do they have? What puts them above the rest of the workers, the rest of the trainers?
Yeah, I think a big thing is being a good communicator. So it's one thing to be good with horses, but if you're not good with your clients, then you're going to find that really hard to be successful in the horse industry as a trainer. I find that I give lots of communication to my clients and they really value that. And so I think that's been a big thing for me, is focusing on good communication, being really clear with people's expectations and expectations of the horse and of me as the trainer, and then also of the client themselves, of their ability and what they realistically are going to achieve. So being really good at communicating is really important. And then the other one is just being prepared to put in the hard work. Horses aren't easy. It's long hours. It's any time of the day or night when things go wrong. And if you're, looking for a 9-to-5 job, then horses probably is not that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what about, because you've got quite a few achievements, have you got one proud moment that you would say that has been my proudest moment so far? What would you say it is?
Definitely very proud of going to New Zealand and competing in Way of the Horse at Equitana in New Zealand. That was definitely one of my biggest goals that I was working towards for many years. So that was definitely one. And then probably a more recent one, this year in April, I competed at Australia's Greatest Horsewoman. So I threw myself in the deep end and entered my quarter horse gelding Soldier into the rookie division of Australia's Greatest Horsewoman. So that required us to do a cutting, a reining, an obstacle course, and a working cow horse. And of those events, I had competed quite a bit myself in the obstacle elements and with Soldier a little bit, but he was still quite green. He's only been under saddle for now not quite 2 years, so as a 10-year-old. So he was a very green, broken, older horse. So I'd never competed in cutting, and I never competed in the working cow horse or the reining, other than one little go at it at the start of the year at the Ranch Horse State Show. So I had to go there, but I was really throwing myself in the deep end and said, look, if we stay at home, we're never going to get any better. Let's go out and have a go and get in the competition ring. And I was really proud of my horse, and we ended up finishing 9th overall out of I think 20 something horses in that division. So I was really, really proud of that achievement with a horse who's really not done a lot and not been anywhere. So that was definitely one of my more recent proud moments for sure.
Now, thinking about, where you are now in 2024, what do you think, and not money, because everyone's got money problems, but your biggest challenge on your way to being where you are now? Because I want to ask you soon about how you overcame it, but just think about your biggest challenge.
I think just being confident to put yourself out there. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not confident to put yourself out into the public eye, then it's never going to go anywhere. So for me, I probably would have said I was fairly quiet and, shy to a degree as a, child, teenager. But then when I get up and stand in front of crowds, say at Equitana, and talk about horses, people would not describe me as a shy person. So that's definitely been something that I've had to work towards as I've developed over the years with my skills with horses, but then my ability to communicate that to people in front of crowds and all of that as well.
All right. Now, I'd like to take you to you teaching people, doing workshops, clinics. Do you see a common fault with the riders, trainers, handlers that you see again and again? Because everyone, when they teach, it's often problems that they've had, that they've overcome, that they're more aware of, and then they, it's almost like they want to put their mark on particular people, particular students. But do you see a common fault? Do you, when you first arrive and you've got half a dozen people in front of you and you look around, that you see this more often than anyone else, and you think, right, this is what we're going to work on first?
Yeah, I think lately it's really just the rider's confidence, as is the case for many trainers, but my main client base is made up of women who generally have had kids and had time off riding and have then returned to riding after potentially 5, 10, 20 years out of the saddle. So I find the common thing for people that come to my clinics and lessons is a lack of confidence and feeling like they're not going to be safe, or that they don't have the skills or the physical ability anymore. And so for me, it's just building up people's confidence in a way that keeps them feeling safe but keeps them progressing slowly. So it's a lot of the mental side of it more than the physical side of it. So that's been something that I've really had to get quite skilled at, communicating to people how they can be safe. So giving them the practical skills with their horse, but then giving them some support with the mental and emotional side as well.
Okay. Now, if I think about a challenge for our listeners, if you've got something that you'd like to tell them, and it doesn't have to be, we're going to set the world on fire, but just something they can do within the next couple of days or within the next week with their horse that they can look at or see, or, might be something that they can do with their horse or within their behaviour, within their own mental, emotional state, within anything that you'd say, try this for a challenge. This is a good exercise to see if you're, and find out what the result is. Anything in mind there?
Yeah, I'd say, just coming back to what we discussed earlier, is if your horse is doing something that you don't like or that you think is bad or getting it wrong, just try and reframe how you view that. So if they make a mistake, go, yes, and just really,
I love that.
really go, oh, yes, that's great. That means we get to do it again. We get to work on it again, rather than getting frustrated and upset and saying, oh, we got that wrong or that didn't work properly. Just go, yes, great. I get to practice that again.
Okay. Now, what are you looking forward to now? After Equitana, what happens then? Or, in the next year, couple of years? Tell us what your future holds.
Yeah, so next year there's a few bigger events that I'm hoping to get along to. So I'm really enjoying getting into the ranch horse showing and the reining a little bit more. So I'll hope to get along to some of the ranch horse shows next year, with hopefully the aim to get to the nationals, which will be later in the year. I wasn't quite ready for that this year, but I'm hoping that next year my horses will be a little bit more seasoned in the show pen and be able to get along to those events. And then there's some big colt starts and things that are sort of in the planning stages that I'm hoping to apply for. So obviously that's out of my hands whether I get selected for that or not, but that would certainly be the goal, would be to hopefully get selected for some of those colt starts and have another opportunity to get in the round pen and show what I can do and give a good deal to some young horses. And then the ultimate long-term goal is always working towards hopefully getting to do Road to the Horse in America one day. So just constantly working towards bettering my process with the colt starting and, putting myself out there.
Okay, now, is there anything that I should have asked you but didn't? Anything else that you would really have liked to talk about, but I didn't ask you?
No, I think that's covered most of it. Yeah.
So if people would like to contact you, what's the best way?
Generally, Facebook is my most used platform. So we've got the Facebook page for the business, which is GC Natural Horsemanship. So that's a good way to see what we do, see what we post about our clients' horses and clinics and events, and send a message if people have any questions or are interested in getting in touch about training. And then I do have the website, but it needs to be updated a little bit. But it's got most of it.
I'm such a horse person.
Yes,
Of course, people say that.
Yeah, it's got most of the key information on there, but it probably needs a little update. And then I've got YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram where I do post videos of training as well. So I've been trying to get a fair bit of content onto there with my Brumbie training at the moment. So with the Brumbie that I've been working with, who I was planning to take to Equitana. So I've been documenting his training process and putting that up on the Facebook and the YouTube and TikTok as well. So.
All right, well, if people would like to contact, you can go to horsechats.com and they can search for you on horsechats.com. There's just a search button there. You just put in people's names. So you can put in Georgia or you can put in Bates, and I think either way you'll find Georgia and you'll be able to scroll to her podcast. It'll have a couple of links there where you can view the podcast, have a look, bit more information, a bit of a summary, and also the contact details for Georgia as well. So have a look there. Go to horsechats.com and search for Georgia. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you so much for coming and spending your time. And we did have a few technology problems, I've got to admit that. But, we're both horse people, so we can't have everything. So sometimes you've just got to overcome these technology problems and get on with it.
Yeah, we got there in the end.
Yep, for sure, for sure. Okay, Georgia, well, thank you. And we'd love to have you back on again sometime soon. So maybe after Equitana.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.